What's good, Maryville? This is Noah Cooper, and I am joined by my co-host, Perry Randall, this week, once again, here on the Droppin' Dimes podcast. How are you doing this week, Perry?
You know, it's been a great week of basketball. A lot of historic things going on, but, I'm just excited to see this last couple months of basketball as we approach the playoffs. I know that the playoff races are starting to get tight, especially in the West. A lot of teams are shifting up and down, so I'm just excited for this last couple months of basketball.
I want to go off what you said just for a second there. You said the playoff standings are getting pretty tight, especially in the West, and you're not wrong because in the East, it looks like the Pistons, now that they're on a 3-game losing streak, are starting to slide out of the playoff race, and it looks like the Heat almost have it locked up to either get an 8 seed or higher, especially with the way that the Bucks and the 76ers have been playing lately. But going to the West, like you said, it's going to be a tight race to the finish between pretty much everyone from the Timberwolves, who now sit in third place, all the way down to the Jazz, who sit in 10th place, because there isn't too much of a difference between those teams. Between all those teams, there's only a 5-game difference, and if you just look between 3rd and 9th place, there's only a 4-game difference. So there's a lot of opportunities there in the Western Conference for teams to move up, down, or even all the way out of the playoffs.
Well, excluding the fact that Jimmy Butler just got hurt, Minnesota's currently in 3rd place, which they were in 4th place basically the whole entire season, and then Oklahoma City was in 5th place for almost the whole entire season, and now they're in 7th. So a lot of switching has happened for sure, but I would honestly credit it to my man Anthony Davis just going off lately. He's really shifted their team since Boogie's gotten hurt, and now they are a 6th seed, where they were like fighting for the 8th seed whenever Boogie was in. So you can really tell that Anthony Davis has really stepped up his game, and as a result, they're moving up in the playoff race.
Well, let's talk about Anthony Davis for a little bit, because after DeMarcus Cousins went out, I think a lot of people thought that the Pelicans weren't going to make the playoffs. I was one of those people. You were one of those people. You told me, we thought the Nuggets would take that 8 seed and the Clippers would, or maybe the Clippers would take the 8 seed, the Nuggets might take the 7 seed, and then the Pelicans would fall out to either 9th or 10th, depending on if the Jazz passed them. And we've now seen with this new emergence of Anthony Davis that the Pelicans have won 6 in a row, following losing 4 games after DeMarcus Cousins, 4 games out of their first 5 when DeMarcus went injured, and they now sit at 34-26. So they're sitting pretty. They've won 7 of their last 10 games, and Anthony Davis has just gone all the way off in the last month. We're talking about stuff that hasn't happened in the longest time. When a guy over the 6-game winning streak is averaging almost 45 points a game, 15 rebounds, and 3 blocks, those are type of numbers that you don't see too often.
Rightfully so, just because, this guy, he's always been that guy with a lot of potential who's been hurt by injuries, plagued by injuries, but never a serious, like an Achilles injury or anything like that. But he's always been plagued by little minor injuries that kept him out. So for this season, he was out for a little bit of the portion of the beginning of the season, but since then, he's been really filling his role as the star player, along when Boogie was playing, but now more so now that he's by himself. But then we also have to credit guys like Jrue Holiday and Rondo. Rondo's playing really good right now. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to find some stats, but, those two are helping Anthony Davis and the Pelicans, exceed in the playoff race. And a guy like Alvin Gentry, their head coach, he was a assistant coach for the Warriors back in, I believe, 2015 when they won the title, 14-15.
So he's learning from guys like Steve Kerr,
right?
And guys like Mike Brown, and they have a great coaching staff there in Golden State. And a guy like him, a guy like Alvin Gentry, to learn from those other great coaches and a great system, he's done a solid job at implementing that system into New Orleans. So when a guy like when a guy like DeMarcus Cousins, when he goes down, they can still have a productive team and still push for the playoffs. Another guy I want to talk about on the Pelicans is former Bull Nikola Mirotic. He's put up some solid numbers since DeMarcus went out. Since he went out, he's been averaging about 15 points a game and 9 rebounds. And I think that rebound production is really solid from him because that's something that they were missing, that a lot of people thought they would miss when DeMarcus Cousins went out. And it seems like Nikola Mirotic has really picked that up.
And I feel like, as great as DeMarcus Cousins is, respectfully so, he's a guy that needs the ball in order to be productive. And I feel like Anthony Davis is almost the exact opposite. Anthony Davis knows how to move without the ball, go get oops and stuff like that. But DeMarcus, he's one of those guys that like to get the ball and try to break you down.
He's one of those John Wall types.
Right.
You know, we see this. We're kind of seeing the same thing with the Wizards right now. Is you see when John Wall's out, the ball movement's a little better. Yeah, like I think everyone can agree when John Wall's on that team, he makes that team better. And you would much rather have John Wall out on the floor, but you see that when he's not out on there, he's not so. The team gets away from being so ball dominant on one player, and you see the ball movement, and that's what we're seeing from New Orleans as well.
And also, with you talking about Miritich rebounds, I believe they just signed Emeka Okafor since Boogie got hurt, and he's been grabbing some boards. I think he's getting like 7 a game.
The comeback.
So right, since he got banged on by Mr. Bean Bryant. So since then, he's now on the Pelicans, and he's putting up some good rebound numbers. Like, he's just playing his role, and I feel like this is what this team is. There's a lot of guys that are just playing their role. Like Drew Holiday, he's not going to do more than what he should. And then Rondo, as long as he's got his head on straight, then that's a really great player. He has like flashbacks to that Celtics team. A couple games ago against the Milwaukee Bucks, he had 16, 8, and 12, and that's almost a near triple-double, and that's what we know Rondo to do is be a triple-double type of guy. But then, of course, you got that horse, that PBG, Anthony Davis. He's been going off the whole entire month of February, and you can really tell. He's been saying it in the media. He's been saying it to everybody, just letting them know that, since DeMarcus went down, I've taken the initiative. I feel like it's on my back to make sure that we get to the playoffs and make sure that we get to the second round or something, because he even said that if DeMarcus was still playing, then they would have probably went to the championship. He feels like, I don't know if I agree with him, but he feels like that.
It might be a little bit of a stretch from Davis to say something like that.
But a player as great as he is, that's what you want to hear.
That's something great when you know that your best player on your team, almost arguably the second best player before DeMarcus got hurt, and now I think there's almost no question from what we've seen when DeMarcus isn't on the court how much better he can be. But from one of your best players, that's something you want to hear, that he has the confidence to be able to say. I want to go back to Emeka Okafor, though. You brought him up. I think he retired shortly after Kobe dunked on him. I think Kobe brought him right. So. He brought him right into retirement, and rightfully so. But as soon as Kobe went out, now you're seeing Emeka Okafor make it back into the NBA.
It's an opportunity.
He's providing a good spark for the Pelicans this year.
Took a couple years off.
Yeah, he really hasn't played since like 2014, right?
Right.
So I don't know what he's been doing in this meantime. I think he was in the G League for a little bit, but he's really providing a spark. And I see they just extended his contract through the end of the season, so that's something good. And I think the tandem of both Nikola Mirotic and Emeka Okafor down low, grabbing those rebounds, can really help the Pelicans stay alive, especially on the offensive glass. And you got a guy like Anthony Davis too. One of my favorite things about him is that he's such a magnet. When the ball comes off the basket, he's such a magnet to go grab that rebound and get that. I want to go back to the stats a little bit here. Last game, he put up 53 points, 18 assists, and 5 blocks.
18 assists or 18 rebounds?
Excuse me, 18 rebounds. Exactly. Well, I mean, he put up 3 assists too, so he's working on that. But 53, 18, and 5 is a number that, according to Basketball Reference, has never been achieved in the history of the NBA to get 50 and 18 rebounds or more in a game. So I thought that was pretty sensational, and I'm really surprised that hasn't been achieved before.
I think everybody saw whenever he was in Kentucky just the amount of potential that this guy really had. And then we didn't know that he was going to work on his jump shot, and his jump shot was going to develop to how it is now. So now that he's even added the jump shot to his game, but understand, in that last game when he did have 53, 18, and 5, he never took a 3. And that's also another stat that's never been done. 53, 18, and 5 with no 3s taken. That's astounding to me. And like I said, this is just a case where
it's like for a player in today's league to be able to do something like that, a 3-point heavy league to be able to do that.
And knowing that he's able to make that, he knows where he's going to get his money at. And then along with his 53, 18, and 5, I think Drew Holiday had 22 rebounds and 7 assists. And then he had 36 and 29 in the games prior to that. But my point is that these two guys, they've been playing with each other for a long time now, or I'd say about good 3-4 years, so they know each other. And Drew Holiday knows where to hit him for the alley-oop. And I think these guys are really starting to play off each other really well now that DeMarcus is out. Not saying that they couldn't when DeMarcus was there, but the opportunity is more so now than what it was then, just because, the ball's not sticking to DeMarcus's hands, and all of a sudden now that DeMarcus Cousins is gone, you got Anthony Davis going up for lobs, and you see Drew Holiday playing off of Anthony Davis, and even though Anthony Davis is not going to get that many assists, but he's still creating a lot of attention because, as you see, they got to make a decision. We got to guard Drew Holiday or we got to guard Anthony Davis, and then Rondo might get you 16 every now and then. So it's just a hard team to really go against. When they had DeMarcus, they beat the Rockets in the game that DeMarcus got hurt in. So this just shows me the potential that this team really has, and it really goes – they're kind of reverting and kind of going back to how the NBA was, where it's kind of a big type of league. And they had the Twin Towers and DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis that can hit the three, but they really don't. So it's just showing me that the game is still able to be won in a big type of like a team that's centered around two bigs. So it's just great to see that, this team has a lot of versatility. And, I feel like fans sometimes get tired of seeing all these threes. Like Golden State and the Rockets that just put up 53s a game and make about 17 of them. So I think it's good to still see that, we still got some good bigs in this league along with someone like Joel Embiid. We got some good bigs in this league, so the league is going to be in good shape for a while. And then Anthony Davis, he's still 24. He still got 2 weeks until his 25th birthday. So this guy is still, I don't even know if this guy's in his prime yet, to be honest. So the league is in great hands, and I'm excited, and Anthony Davis is putting on a show. So, AD, if you listening, keep it up, man.
I remember when when Alvin Gentry first got to the Pelicans, and one of the first things he said was, we need to start to teach Anthony Davis how to shoot threes. I'm out here thinking, like why? Like this is a guy that thrives around the basket, and you're moving him further and further away from the basket. Because we saw this out there in Memphis with Marc Gasol, too, a guy that thrives so well right around the basket. And the first thing they're saying, guys like Fizdale are saying, like he's got to be out here shooting threes. Like sometimes big men can really thrive in the paint, and they don't have to move outside, even though that's where today's game is going.
And I think also with Anthony Davis, he's a great free throw shooter, and we don't see that with all of our bigs in the league.
26 free throws attempted,
right?
21
for
made,
26,
not bad.
And someone like Dwight Howard doesn't make that many free throws. He's kind of getting better, so I'll give him that. But someone like Dwight Howard, someone like Andre Drummond, who kind of struggles with free throws, to see a big that's able to knock the free throws down, because he's going to be a guy that's going to be getting almost kind of slobber knocker down there in the paint.
And did you see those dribble moves too from that video out in LA over the summer?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's a guy that he's got point guard, abilities to go out there and dribble. And I love how someone quote tweeted it, and they were like, you say basketball was tougher in the 70s and 80s. Well, I'd like to see a big defend this in the 70s and 80s, because the moves he was pulling, the behind the backs, the crossovers, the hezzies, he was doing it all out there. Granted, it was just a gym over the summer, but he's got that point guard prowess and that point guard ability to have such great ball handling skills.
And let's go ahead and give credit where credit is due. That trainer's name is Dribble Too Much. When I was in high school, I was trying to learn dribble drills and stuff like that. I would watch some of his videos because that man got some dance moves. So I'll tell you that. But Anthony Davis, he was a point guard. Let's not forget about that in high school. And then he had a big old growth spurt. So he's got the point guard in him. So them handles, all they need to do is be developed, along with how his jump shot came along. I just think
he's got that Perry Randall III point guard abilities out
something
there.
like that. But Anthony Davis, that man is a bucket getter, and you know what? I don't see why not. He won't win it, but I don't see why not. His name is not mentioned enough in the MVP conversation, because his team is 6. And when I project him, you said I didn't have him in the playoffs, and I did. I had him at 8th, but now they have 6.
Before the season started,
I had him at 8th. I got the list right here.
Before the season started, remind you.
Hey.
No, Perry had him at 8th before the season started, and then as soon as DeMarcus went down, I think he even said on the podcast, so we might have to go back and review the tapes here.
I did say that,
but I think he said that they weren't going to make it anymore. So a little bit of both. You're about 50-50 here, but the Pelicans sure do have a big shot to make it. And like we were saying, all credit goes to Anthony Davis and what he's been able to do for that team, and all the intensity that he's brought out on the court. We're going to move on to our next subject here, though, and that's going to be kind of a little bit of the opposite of what the Pelicans are doing, and that's tanking, because it seems like there's a lot of teams right now that have been tanking in the league. As we saw in the last week, the bottom 8 teams in the NBA, they had a 44-game losing streak combined until the Nets and the Bulls had to play each other, and one of those teams finally had to win a game. They both tried not to, but they wound up doing this. So, Perry, do you think there's any way we could fix tanking in the future so we don't see these teams trying to lose every game and don't see these teams trying to rest their starters when they're healthy, just to try to get a better position in the lottery going forward?
Honestly, I don't think so. Just because with these teams, these are grown men playing, and you can't make somebody make a shot. This is on them to make shots and stuff. So, with teams and along with organizations, let's use a Mark Cuban, for example. That team, he has his goal of, he knows that Dirk is about to leave, and he knows that he's going to have a couple guys that he wants to build around, say like Harrison Barnes and maybe Wesley Matthews. I know Wesley Matthews is in trade conversations, but let's say that he stays. So he has a couple guys.
Who's surprisingly younger than I thought he was. I think he's only like 32. For some reason, I was thinking Wesley Matthews was like 37 for some reason. But
he's got a 37-year-old game.
Yeah. No. So he'll be in the NBA for a while. So that's something to watch out for still.
But that team, say like that team, they have a direction. And we saw it with Philadelphia. They weren't losing games on purpose, but they knew that we weren't going to win right now. We tried it. They tried to go after free agents a little while back, but no one wanted to go to Philadelphia. Philadelphia's not the greatest place on earth, even though Will Smith might make it look like it. It's not the greatest place on earth. But beside that, this is just a direction that the team wants to go in, and respectfully so. Now, shaving points during a game and fans can literally see it, that's a different subject, because I feel like Adam Silver knows that that's a bad look for the league and no one wants to see that. Mm-hmm. But say like someone like Mark Cuban, like I said, they got Dirk Nowitzki, and they know that they're not going to win a championship anytime soon with the team that they have. So it's just, this is the direction that the team has chosen to go in, and there's nothing that the league can really do about it.
Yeah, my man Mark Cuban, he really got fined for stating the obvious. He got fined $600,000 for pretty much stating the obvious and saying, obviously, we're going to be tanking because we really have nowhere else to go this season, and we're not going to make the playoffs. But I love how you look out of Chicago and you see like guys like Robin Lopez, who have been really putting up good numbers for them all season. He's not even injured right now, and they're sitting him. They're just sitting him out. And a guy like Justin Holiday, they're just sitting him out as well, and they're not playing. And they're only playing Zach LaVine on games where they know that they're probably going to lose. So is there any way that the league can step into a situation like that and say, all right, guys, you got to play these players. You can't just sit them on the sidelines and not have them play at all. Could you make someone play if they're not injured?
In my opinion, I wouldn't like to see that from the league. I feel like teams should have their own freedom to decide that this is the direction that we go in. And I feel like that's good for a team, because we can't force you guys to be good. Like, say like the Chicago Bulls go against the Charlotte Hornets. And I expect that the Charlotte Hornets are going to win. And if the Chicago Bulls want to try to take the night off to preserve themselves, why not? I don't expect for you guys to win. I don't have the Chicago Bulls in my playoff race. So what good does it do for me to make you guys play? That's my point.
I think personally, tanking is at an all-time high right now because of what we've seen from what Sam Hinkie has been able to do as the 76ers general manager, and what he's done with the process. Yeah, what he's done with the process. And he did miss on a couple draft picks. I'm talking to you, Nerlens Noel and excuse me.
Jahlil Okafor?
Yeah, Jahlil Okafor. I couldn't spit it out there for a second.
I got you.
You got me, though. But I'm talking to those two guys. But the picks that they did nail, they've really provided a lot of production for him, and people love Sam Hinkie. Over at the Sloan Conference over the weekend, which is an advanced analytics conference at MIT, Sam Hinkie got a huge applause over the weekend because people loved everything he was able to do at Philadelphia and what he's been able to do in the draft and get all the players he's been getting. So I think a lot of people are trying to follow his system and tank as often as possible.
Well, I feel like it's kind of become cliche to say trust the process, but it's truly, you have to trust the process, because Joel Embiid missed, I think, his first 2 or 3 seasons because of injuries. Ben Simmons missed his rookie year because of injuries. Jahlil Okafor really didn't play. So
he still doesn't play.
so I mean, like it's seriously, you got to trust the process with some of these rookies, especially when the top of the league is so heavy. Like we know that the Sixers are not going to win this year. As much as we want to trust the process is not ready yet for a championship. So we just know, that they're not going to win. And someone like Sam Hinkie, it's important for him to have confidence in some of the picks that he's making. Someone like Joel Embiid, that we see his potential, and all we gotta do is work with him. And credit to like the player development in Philadelphia. These guys are really working with players like Ben Simmons. They need to work with Markelle Fultz for sure, and someone like Joel Embiid. So
well, as long as they can get Markelle Fultz's range outside the paint, I think they'll be okay with him.
I just think that it's important for teams to continue to trust the process, and it's going to be a rough process, because before you see, how can you appreciate the sun if you've never seen rain? So it's just important that you make sure that you get through the bad times, because you know that good times are ahead, and you know that good players are going to develop into their full potential.
Well, what do you think about the NBA Board of Governors ruling this summer to make it so that the top 3 teams that have the worst record have a slightly less chance of getting the number 1 pick? Do you like that? Do you think it can help the league if that's the case? Because when you look over it, in the past, the worst you could get if you had the worst record was the 4th pick, and now the worst you can get is the 5 pick, and your chances of getting the number 1 pick go down from 25 to 19, and we see that from about every pick. It seems like every pick has a reduced chance of getting a higher pick. Do you like something like that in terms of tanking, Perry?
I think so, just because for a couple of years we saw Cleveland get the number 1 pick back-to-back with Anthony Bennett and then Andrew Wiggins, and then I think we've seen a couple of years where 76ers got the first pick like back-to-back. So it's just important that we don't see the same teams getting the number 1 pick every year, number 2 pick. So I think it's good that we're kind of diversifying it, making sure that other teams have a good chance of getting a number 1 pick, just because like someone like Phoenix Suns, I feel like they really need a number 1 pick, in my opinion, to go along with someone like Devin Booker and Josh Jackson.
And they've been in the lottery for years now, and they seem like they just can't hit it on the right guy, but aside from Booker.
All right, so it's just important that the league continues to look at stuff like that. We don't want the same teams to continue to get the first pick, 2nd pick, and it's good that they have looked at it, and it's going to be good that they continue to look at it to make sure that teams like the Suns, teams like the Mavericks, the Nets have more of an opportunity to get the first pick. Even a team like your Bulls have a more chance to get the number 1 pick, opposed to teams like what did I just say? Who got the first pick last year? 76ers, yeah. Mm-hmm. So just teams like that.
Well, let's move it on from the whole tanking aspect, because I'm sure people don't necessarily like to hear talking about that. We're going to talk about a team that we thought might be tanking, and they're still kind of in that area of possibly either tanking or trying to make the playoffs, and that's the Los Angeles Lakers, because Lonzo Ball just came back, and the Los Angeles Lakers have won their last 3 games with him back. And do you feel like they should try to start losing as many games as possible, or do you feel like they should try to make a playoff push with what they have on their roster, since they do not have their draft pick?
It's very important that they do not try to lose as many games as possible, because they are a free agent destination. They're trying to lure in free agents, and no free agent.
So you want them to look as best as possible when the free agents come in.
Yeah, right. Because you want to be an attractive place. We don't. A guy like LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Klay Thompson, they don't want to see we're about to just be losing, because Klay Thompson, he's winning right now in Golden State. Kawhi Leonard, he's winning right now. Well, he's not even playing, but he was winning in San Antonio. And then someone like LeBron James, of course, he's winning almost every single year.
Yep.
So it's important that a team like the Lakers make sure that we look at it as attractive as possible. And going back to Lonzo Ball, you can really tell that the game is really different whenever he's playing, because the pace really changes. You can tell that he's the floor general. He's not going to try and do too much, but he's going to really try and get his guys involved. And we saw that even in UCLA whenever he's playing, he's doing little tap passes to guys and just doing a lot of fancy stuff. But it's fancy stuff that is Showtime stuff for a city like LA, and I think that's what the fans kind of feed off of, the way he plays, and also along with the players.
Exactly, and I like how they've looked since he's returned, and I liked how they were doing good before the All-Star break, before he returned too. And I really think if they do keep up this winning ways, their winning ways, it would give a better chance at them to get a guy like LeBron James or a guy like Kawhi Leonard in the offseason, like you were saying. So I've liked how they've looked with him out on the court, and overall, I think they could I mean, theoretically, they're only 4 games out of the 10 seed, and the 10 seed's only a game and a half out of the 8 seed. So theoretically, if they really wanted to, I don't believe they could, but theoretically, they could even, try to make a playoff push, because the teams they got coming up really aren't, the greatest teams ever. They got the Magic in a couple games, the Heat, they got the Heat in back-to-back games. They're coming up with the Grizzlies as well. So, I mean, they do have a chance if they wanted to try to win more games coming up.
And credit to Brandon Ingram having his best year in his career. He's last game he had 21 and 10. The game before that, I believe he had 13 or 16, one of those two. But just credit to him really stepping up and kind of being that guy along with someone like Julius Randle, who they made more room for by trading Nance away to get Isaiah Thomas. So I'm really liking the way that Magic Johnson has really stepped up and kind of made the right moves for this team going forward, because LeVar said it in the offseason. He said this team is going to make the playoffs. And you know what? It's very rare that LeVar is wrong. He says some outrageous things, but it's very rare that he's wrong. So I would not be surprised if they made the playoffs and he comes out of nowhere and says, by the words of Zeus, all of them, I told you guys. So, someone like Channing Frye, I think it's important that his veteran leadership, along with someone like Isaiah Thomas, even though his leadership probably isn't that great, just along those two guys coming to the locker room kind of help molding these guys for the future so they can lure in top free agents.
And I'm glad you brought up a couple things. One of those being Channing Frye, because coming out of Cleveland, I think Dwayne Wade and as well as Richard Jefferson and LeBron, all of those guys said that Channing Frye was the best guy to have in their locker room. I heard that right on Richard Jefferson's Road Trippin' podcast. He always said Channing Frye is one of the funniest guys that he knows, and he just loves to be around Channing Frye. And we've seen that on Twitter. The weightlifting video that Channing Frye had a couple weeks ago, and he was fake lifting the weights over his head. So that's a guy that he could really get those young guys even more energized and play better moving forward. But another guy like that you mentioned was Julius Randle, because since January started, he's been averaging 17 and 9 on nearly 60% shooting, and along with Brandon Ingram, since that same moment, to be averaging 17, 5, and 5 on 50% shooting. I think that's something else to watch out for, because I feel like they have a good core moving forward, especially with Kyle Kuzma, even though he's kind of hit the rookie wall, along with a few other rookies like Jason Tatum, for example. But I still feel like they have a solid core moving forward, where if they could get one of these premier free agents in the offseason, it would really help out for next season.
And you can also see that it's another one of those cases where a guy like Lou Walton, who coached with the Warriors and led them to one of the best starts in NBA history, I think it was like 24-0.
Well, at this point, I think we could coach the Warriors and we'd be just as good. If we're seeing guys like Mike Brown, Luke Walton, and Steve Kerr perform very well out for him, I think that hurts Steve Kerr's case for one of the best coaches ever, is what they've been able to do with the team.
You know what? Steve Kerr would be all right. He's going to get championships. But a guy like Lou Walton, he's just kind of learning from someone like Steve Kerr. He's playing positionless basketball in Los Angeles, and you can really tell that it's really working. Brandon Ingram started the other night at the point guard position. Julius Randle brings up the ball a lot. Lonzo Ball doesn't always need to have the ball in order to be effective. He can spot up and shoot. So you just really see that these guys are really playing off of each other, because we know that we can all do a little bit of what we know we can do. And I think that's important for these type of guys, especially as they're young. They're kind of molding their game still. So it's important that these guys are kind of touching up on every single part of their game just to be as good as they possibly can be.
And it'll be nice to see how LA looks moving forward, especially with all the facilities they got out in LA, and for these younger guys to improve their game over the offseason. So that's going to be it for the Droppin' Dimes podcast right now. If you want to listen to more, check out the Droppin' Dimes show tomorrow on KZLX from 4 to 6. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things tomorrow. We're going to bring over the Anthony Davis thing again. We're going to be talking about Jimmy Butler's injury and how that affects the Timberwolves. And, pretty much the whole NBA, the top of the NBA, from the Raptors to the Celtics to even the bottom of the NBA, like we mentioned earlier. We might be talking about the Kings and the Grizzlies a little more. So stay tuned for all of your NBA action here on Droppin' Dimes. For Perry Randall, I'm Noah Cooper, and we are out on the Droppin' Dimes podcast.